Hey guys, you're watching Ask Daniel and Gian, episode 2. We're trying to do this a little more regularly. You guys seem to like to ask questions more in the comments than in the email, but if you can, please try to send your questions to that email you see on the screen right there. Thanks for watching the first video. We had fun.
And let's get right into this one.
Right to it.
So I'll let you read.
Okay.
This is our first question, and it's actually going to tie into a video we just posted, a scene from Namaste, London. But this question has to do with.
So this question is from Niladri Mukherjee. Hey guys, I have 2 questions. Difficult in parentheses. Why do American people tend to tag people from non-European countries with their ethnicity? As it's evidently seen that usually people are segregated as Asian Americans, African Americans, Indian Americans, Hispanics, etc. But hardly do we hear the term European Americans being used by people media. Even the original inhabitants are termed as Native Americans to make it sound like others and club them with that group. For example, when Obama became the president, he was constantly referred to as African American, but no one calls Trump as European American. Why do you think this would create identity crisis with the majority European Americans as it happened during the early 18th century? So my first response to that is absolutely to segregate us from the rest of the people. I think that people, if you come here, the majority of the population is still white. The majority of policymakers, government officials, etc., are still white. And part of it is like, my opinion, if you make everyone their own group, they won't unite. You know? So it's like trying to like instilling this.
It's Mexicans versus black people.
Yeah.
It's Mexicans versus this. Instead of like
it's installing a faux pride within each minority group that actually works against us because we don't work together. That's one way of putting it. I don't want to get too crazy with that. I mean, that's part of it. The other part is, you know, European American doesn't make sense since everyone still thinks Americans are white, so they don't need to. You know, you just say American, and you know that someone's white.
They're the originals. That's the
of
thing.
all these terms thrown out there, though, the only one that was self-created, I think, was African American. Like, black people use that term for themselves.
Yeah, I don't.
And it's hard to explain. Like, we can't really comment on the experience, the black experience in America, because it's so much different than everything that we've gone through and that our cultural backgrounds have gone through in comparison. You know, the one thing is like that's the only group of people here that were slaves, that were brought here against their will, while the rest of us, for the most part, came willingly. I mean, for opportunity.
Even the Chinese, yes, they were manipulated into coming here to build the railroads and stuff like that, but that wasn't 400 years of railroad building.
No,
you know
and they went back to China, and then they came back. They didn't stay. That's the thing. Like, there's been a lot of... You can break down the migration patterns that the Chinese came once, they stopped coming, then they came again. There's different waves of it. It wasn't a continuous thing.
And then Hispanics, you know,
there's different waves of that as well. I mean, well, I don't even want to say waves. There was like a group of people that were already living here for a long time, and then all of a sudden they're living in America.
Which was half of my family. That was the story for them. They were in what's now present-day Arizona, and then when that part of the country became America, they were here already. And it's just same thing with Native Americans or indigenous peoples, whatever term you want to use. I mean, they used to be called Indians for forever. I mean, that's when I grew up, they were still calling them Indians.
Yeah, and they're called Indians. I mean, we all know this. I'm sure you guys know, but Christopher Columbus was looking for a faster route to India, and he landed here. So instead of coming
Great navigator.
Yeah, instead of coming up with a new name, they called it... They thought they reached India
because it makes sense because he didn't want to own his mistake. He said, no. This is India. This is India.
And they actually ended up turning it into West India. They ended up calling it West India. So the people were referred to as Indians here. And then eventually they became American Indians, and then they became Native Americans, which is, I think that's a fairly new term, like the last 30 years.
And now it's even indigenous. That's the indigenous people.
Even though the root of indigenous is still India.
Which is it's all to continue to segregate people, and that's kind of what Gian's point is.
Yeah.
So why that's happening? It's definitely because of race. Race is very powerful in this country, whether or not people want it to be.
We talk about it in the
Namaste
London, but.
So this second question, why is Winston Churchill so respected in America and the UK? When he was no less than Hitler, Churchill was responsible for the genocide of 4 million Indians, and Britishers killed, tortured, and enslaved around 30 million Indians in their 200 years of rule in India. What makes them less of a demon than the Nazis? Well, first of all, this is just going to be my thing. I don't care about Winston Churchill at all. Winston Churchill was not one of the people that I was grown. I know who he is. I completely know all about him, the Battle of Britain. But I have always known him as a drunk, as someone who could make a good speech. And he was also one of the 3 leaders of the Allied powers during World War II.
And that's why.
Other than that, that's really it.
That's the main reason why people bring up Winston Churchill in the United States, because he was one of the leaders of the Allies in World War II. World War II is still like a very big deal here in the States.
But I don't know anyone who has Winston Churchill posters on their wall, or like they're not naming their kids Winston.
No, we don't. I've never gotten into a conversation with someone about Winston Churchill.
Ever.
I think he's bigger,
England makes sense because he's English.
Yeah, he's English, but like here, not so much. People still talk about the founding fathers here. They still talk about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington.
Which all have their demons too.
Yeah, and Benjamin Franklin and so on. So John Adams, so on and so forth. Like those are the people that you learned about in school. Like, I don't remember when I was in school, they never ever brought up Winston Churchill at all. This is all, after the fact. Because I'm into history and stuff, but I don't. He's not a hero of mine. I don't.
At all.
He's like whatever. Like I
don't care about it.
I don't really care about any like political figure in England.
And then as far as like the whole genocide thing and stuff like that, I'm just going to comment very briefly on it. History is written by the victors, and in America, there's a lot of anti-American rhetoric. So Hitler's always going to be the bad guy, but we're not going to talk about how we enslaved African Americans.
Yeah.
We will, but we'll touch on it. But it was okay. We're not going to talk about how we committed genocide against the people of this country.
Hitler was the big baddie, and he's still used today as
the example. Even though Stalin killed way more than he ever did, Mao Zedong killed way more than he ever did. I mean, these are real figures, and the educated people out there, and I'm not saying people out there are stupid, but it's because of our American system with up to basically high school, they don't really want to harp on the negatives of history.
Well, it's not just that. You're also like World War II is indoctrinated into everyone,
Yes.
and we're told that
Hitler was the bad guy.
It's like a way of patriotism, like instilling patriotism in people. That if it wasn't for the American army in World War II, that Hitler
we wouldn't have the freedom.
That our freedoms, but that Hitler would have conquered the world if it wasn't for the American army. And that, if you go and do your research, it's actually, I mean, we helped, but it wasn't a major. We weren't as big a factor as they liked to make us think.
The one thing about
the one thing about World War II that really changed the world is that Europe was so decimated by it, and Japan was decimated, that it allowed the U.S. to rise up and become the world's premier superpower. Because mainland America wasn't affected, they were able to take over economically and instill, basically the way the world is today. That's why it's such a global power, because of the repercussions of World War II. But you'll never hear someone actually say that. If they're super patriotic, they either don't know or they're trying to ignore it. Because.
And then there's other theories out there too, which I'm not saying 100% subscribe to, but you have to hear both sides for every argument. And there's always the one or two people out there who will say, well, it's because, and this is going to be controversial, I know it, but well, the Holocaust, it was a big deal, right? But because of people in power and people with money, that story gets pushed forward as opposed to the 70 million Stalin got killed. And I'm not gonna like start going into conspiracy theories and stuff like that. But it's like
the Armenian genocide by the Turkish army isn't recognized here.
And Gian mentioned this in the live Q&A thing, where I didn't even know about Armenians until System of a Down.
Yeah.
And that's my greater point. That's what I'm saying. There's people who have enough power and say so to push forward an agenda. You're going to hear about that first.
And speaking of Native Americans, there's the genocide of the Native Americans. There was, before the British landed here, I think the number was, there was over 10 million natives, and now there's maybe a few thousand. I'm gonna say there's probably in the less than 100,000 of
Yeah.
people that are still part of Native American tribes.
And you're talking about like an eighth of a percentage.
And it happened over a span of 100 years too. It was like very quickly like just eliminated. Cultures completely eliminated. Civilizations completely eliminated here by the American government. In fact, the English are painted as the Revolutionary War. They're painted as these terrible, evil people because they were trying to collect taxes. The English actually helped out a lot of the Native American tribes and recruited them to help fight against the American in the Revolutionary War. And they withheld they held up their part of their treaties. They had treaties with these Native American tribes. The U.S., the American Revolutionary Army, wiped their ass with these treaties and ended up killing and taking more land from the natives. So.
And we put them on our $20 bill.
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson,
yeah.
and it's just.
And to be fair, all the founding fathers were all English.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I was just about to say. It's ironic because people like to say, well, Americans fought. No. It was English versus English. But anyway, so next question.
It's interesting. We have a question from a non-Indian, unless they're from Goa and happen to have a Latin name. But from Alexis Perez. She has my last name. Alexis Perez. He or she. I came across your podcast. I have a few questions. What is your ultimate goal for the podcast? How do you think it contributes to society and the issues we face today? I think the ultimate goal is just to communicate with as many people as possible, and this obviously we'd like to make this a full-time job, a career, to be able to survive off it. But I think we have a voice. I mean, it's if you go on our Facebook fan page, it kind of says that we have a voice. We'd like to use it. There's not enough representation of Latino people out there in American media, and even if
those that are very like cookie cutter, and they're like to a narrative, and they don't want to stray too far. Rice and beans, Hispanics, so we like to call them. The Taco Bell, like the very stereotypical. And we are that to an extent because we are Hispanic, but we're also not that. And it also has to do with like. Maybe we don't speak to the entire world, but if we can speak to 1 million people of the 7 billion, I mean, that's a lot of people we can talk to. And that might, we're trying to find like-minded individuals and people who might not be like-minded and continue a discussion, to continue to have a conversation, to continue to have interaction and to grow. And like Gian said, the full-time job thing is not necessarily a financial thing. Obviously, that just becomes a part of the experience of growing, but it's more of the interaction, because at the end of the day, we're talking to each other, right? We can do this off camera, but what we can't do is talk to each other and reach thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So far, people have enjoyed it.
And we want to, we're just, like I said earlier, we're a voice. We want to be a voice for people. We want people to, to feel like they're being represented and their opinions, because right now we're in a very polarized climate politically, and Daniel and I don't sit all the way on one side or the other side. We
fluctuate. And we don't agree either. We don't always agree with each other.
Yeah, we have different ideas, and I think it's good for people to know that, you don't have to be part of a team. You don't have to be part of team this or team that, You have the right to be.
We're team, no team.
Yeah.
We're team, no team.
So that's that. Do you plan ever having any experts to discuss things into further detail? We love to have guests on here, and we try to find experts, but it's like at the level we're at right now, we really can't get the most respected people on. We're trying, but it's just like, we have so many subs. I don't even know how many listens our iTunes and SoundCloud
Yeah, because it doesn't
gets.
Really track. It doesn't. You can't track those
so
statistics.
we don't know how popular that is.
Yes, the answer to your question is yes. We absolutely plan to have, because we enjoy talking to people.
And I think it makes the show better when we have another guest in, because then we can have a different kind of interaction instead of, if you talk to the same person every day, you're never going to get very
anything
far.
different.
It's
going to be fun.
It's like being on Facebook. When you put a post on Facebook and everybody likes it, it's all like everyone.
Your same friends are the ones who are
everyone's
liking
going to agree with you, and the second that someone disagrees with you, then everybody piles on them, and we don't want that. We like to have an open discussion, not an argument so much, but an open discussion. So of course, we'd love to have experts on.
And then finally, what type of audience are you guys currently targeting or would like to target? Oh, we kind of already covered that. We don't really have a specific audience. We kind of just want everybody to listen to us. That's the goal. because
right now, I mean, if we're going to be completely honest, right now we're focusing on India because, you know,
they're giving us the most interactions.
you guys in India have given us the most. You've been the most receptive so far to our channel,
and we continue.
We
we'll never forget about our upbringings, but we want to continue to expand, just because of the fact that if you limit yourself, I feel like YouTubers now are limiting, and at least in America, are limiting themselves to America and America only. And I interact with Americans all day. Gian interacts with Americans all day. We don't interact with the world. And what we've been doing with this podcast and with the reaction videos and with this podcast in particular, we're finding out how little we know about the rest of the world. And it's been fun. So, I mean, if that means we're going to be talking to people in Russia and China and South Korea and England or wherever the hell, it doesn't matter, Central America, South America, that's great because it's just furthering the discussion. We're bringing the world together. We have the internet.
And then once we're able to make a little more time, we're going to start expanding into different parts of the world as well, different reaction videos, different movie reviews. You know, just right now we can only focus on one region at a time, along with trying to do, you know, still try to do American movies when we can. You know, like we're going to do, this is like 5% a comic book superhero channel, you know, so we're going to throw that in there.
Because we love comics, movies, video games. We want to do video games. Like me and Gian have been talking about doing a video game channel, or maybe just adding that to this channel, where we do live streams and we can interact that way. Maybe even start.
As soon as we have a Twitch, we'll let you know the handle.
And you know, maybe even start clan tags. I don't know what games you guys like to play. I love MMOs, RPGs, FPSs. Gian likes sports games, but he also will dabble in the FPSs and stuff like that. I don't know if you like MMOs though. Like,
I haven't played an MMO in a while.
I played Warcraft.
You know, MMOs
it's time consuming.
Yeah, time consuming. That's
if you want to play World of Warcraft with me, you might not have a Daniel and Gian show. That's what I'm going to say. Because when I go in, I go in. But you know, we want to expand. We sports. We know we both enjoy sports. We have been on record saying we want to try to learn about cricket and learn about other world sports that we've heard about, and we're always like, it's not baseball, it's not whatever, right. And that's just us being ignorant. So, but anyway, our last question.
Whoever asked the question, thanks for the question. Leave a comment and let us know who
I screwed up and didn't write it down right.
What do you think about Indian comedy groups and individual? So far, we haven't really watched any like stand-up for Indian comedians. But the groups, you know, AIB and
hilarious. EIC, we've only watched one, so I can't comment specifically.
So far, I don't think we've been affected as much by the cultural differences. I think, you know, right now, funny is funny.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of Western stuff that's used comedically by them. You know, obviously, they're speaking English, and you know, sarcasm is like
universal.
Yeah, universal. So
because timing is universal. Comedy's timing, and if you have the timing, you're going to be able to make it.
Yeah, I think subject matter is always the difference culturally. Right. Like, you know, like in Latin America, they're not a big fans of potty humor. So like fart jokes and
which is hilarious to me.
Gross stuff like that.
Even
like,
Gian kind of strays away from some.
Yeah, I don't think that stuff's funny.
I think it's hilarious.
Crass. It's just okay. You know, yeah, you ripped one. Ooh.
I think it's funny. So second question, is it at par with the comedy that you guys are served with in the U.S.? Well, I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of crappy comedies out there.
Yeah.
The great comedies, you know, the great TV shows, I feel like would transcend, you know, whether it's an American or not. Like, we like Parks and Recreations. That's probably funny universally. Let us know if that's true or not. Like, I liked The Office growing up when I was watching it in high school.
Ricky Gervais's Office too.
Exactly. Let's see what else. Like, Silicon Valley's funny. I'm pretty sure that'd be funny universally. Curb Your Enthusiasm, Seinfeld. Like,
see, that's I think that's
Seinfeld.
I think Seinfeld and Curb are like more regional stuff.
Let us know in the comments, because if it's not, I might be wrong.
My old guitar player, he's from Russia, and we were watching Curb like on the way back from Vegas.
And he was not having it.
He was pissed. Like, he was like, "Why do you make this stupid show? This show's dumb. It is ridiculous. This guy, yes, I get it.
So let us know.
He's asshole. Nobody likes him. I get it. He does stupid shit. This show's dumb. I hate it. Where's South Park? I want to watch South Park.
South Park. There's an example of comedy that's an American comedy, but kind of just transcends being locked to America. But anyway, send us more comedy stuff. Like, not just AIB, not just EIC, excuse me. Send us, like, I want to see viral videos in India. Because we have viral videos that go viral here in the States.
Yeah.
I want to know what goes viral in India. Send us that in the email, because we would love to, like, react to that on this podcast. But anyway, last comment from Metalhead India. What are your views on film versus digital?
Oh, this is going to be interesting.
I don't know if we have enough time to get into this. But
We'll make it real quick. I'll let Daniel start.
So, when Gian and I first met, and I'll own up that I've changed. 100% I will own up to that I've 100% shifted in my views. When I first met Gian, I was so pretentious about shooting on film and the importance on shooting on film, and how, like, if you wanted to be considered a serious filmmaker, you needed to shoot on film, etc., etc. But once we started to actually make content, once we started to actually make movies, and we actually started to see the developments of the digital camera, you know, the Red Cinema camera, the Arri Alexa, even DSLRs, you know, your Canon 5Ds, 7Ds, 80Ds, etc., etc. Now with the Sony, you can basically shoot in the dark. Shooting in film is more of a luxury now than ever before, and if you can shoot in it, great, but that shouldn't be your goal. I personally am from the camp where shoot your movie with what you own. If that's your fucking iPhone, then you shoot with your iPhone. If that's your DSLR, which we're shooting on right now, shoot on that. So I've shifted on that. I think it's a respected art form, film. I can still tell the difference, but it's becoming very, very, very hard to tell the difference. And a lot of people, I feel like, can't tell the difference. And I just feel like it's very, very minute, and I think I can only tell the difference because I work in color correction, so I actually work with, like, manipulating digital images, and so, like, I see it all the time. But that's my thing. I'm a digital guy now.
See, I think Daniel can't tell the difference. I think everyone that says they can tell the difference is full of shit.
I can, though.
I think that's what he's going to tell you. It's like when people, like, compare speakers, and they compare a $3,000 speaker to a $5,000 or a $50,000 speaker. You know, there's a certain point where your ear can only hear so much, but there's people out there that'll say, "Oh, they can hear the difference." Like,
okay,
hey, let me finish, Dick. I let you go on your little rant. See, that's the thing. We've been fighting about this all the time. I think we're at the point right now where, technologically speaking, you know, there's people out there that say film's better. I don't agree with that whatsoever.
Me either.
I think maybe that original print,
IMAX, is better.
Well, that's a completely different technology, though.
I know, but it's film,
though. So there's people out there, like, I watched, for example, I found a theater to watch Quentin Tarantino's last movie in 70 millimeter, and it was a waste of time.
It was.
You know, and the more they run the film, the more it degrades. So you start seeing the scratches in the film, and some people like those cracks. Some people think they're cool, whatever. Like, that doesn't, it takes away from the experience for me. I just think, I think right now, if you're going to compare a film, I think digital all the way, because one, you can see what you shoot right away. You know, right away, you can see it. That right when you're done with the take, you can rewind the take. You can't do that with film. You know, you could shoot a whole project, and if somebody screwed up, your whole day's gone, because.
Which I will say has an advantage for filmmakers, because it'll weed them out, first of all. It'll make you aware of what you need to do and what you don't need to do. But the problem is, you learn that in film school. We didn't learn that in film school. USC has a very strict anti-film policy, as a matter of fact.
And they actually started it with our year. We're the first year where they didn't shoot their
George Lucas donated $175 million in 2007, and his number one, not request, but demand was that USC abandon film unless you were taking cinematography 3 and above, because he was one of the forefronts. He was one of the fathers of digital cinema, in my opinion. And he understood that that's where the technology was going.
And he developed the pretty much the first major digital editing software. You know, so Avid, and that's the industry standard, to the point now where, you know, you have so many old editors that learned on Avid, they're not willing to learn on Premiere. So Final Avid Cut is still, like, the main thing on most TV shows and features. You know, people are starting to adapt more to Adobe Premiere.
And as Gian said, you know, you run into problems when you project film. I remember when I watched Good, the Bad, and the Ugly on the screen for the first time. I mean, I've seen it prior to that, but I watched it at Quentin Tarantino's theater, and the film burned up on the last reel. So we didn't watch the rest of the movie. It literally just burned up, and that's it, because that's just what happens sometimes. IMAX film, 70 millimeter still has the best film quality. Nothing has topped it yet. We're getting close because the Red has 8K, and we're going to be going over there because they project IMAX has an 11K resolution. So we're getting close to that.
I have an issue with that as well. I think we're getting to a point where the resolution is getting just way too high, where it's just unnecessary, and it's making things like, I don't want to see the actors' pores. You know, I don't want to see their blemishes.
It depends on what the movie is, though, because I feel like it's an abused technology, definitely. But movies like Dunkirk, I genuinely felt like needed to be in IMAX. I know you didn't see it, so I'm gonna have to say. We're
watching regular dramatic television shows where they're shooting in this super high.
And I've worked. I'm not gonna mention names, but I've worked with certain YouTubers who have millions of followers, and this is me as a production person doing sound for them, and they were shooting their YouTube videos with 8K RED cameras. That is so freaking ridiculous. It's not even funny. If you have the money to afford that, absolutely awesome, great. You still shouldn't shoot it with that. No. You should pay me as a crew member more money, because that means you have the money to do that. I still haven't been paid by that from them, by the way.
Oh,
but anyway,
that's
my point.
That's a completely different. Like, we could go off on a tirade on that. Like, and we'll just throw that in. That we're gonna end it on that. There's a lot of filmmakers out there who don't know what they're doing. They're focused more on the equipment they're using for picture. They don't spend the rest on their crew or the other aspects of filmmaking.
Most important thing is sound, guys. Yeah. Most important thing is sound. I don't care what anyone tells you.
You can turn your eyes off. You can't turn your ears off.
And if anyone tells you different, do not take them seriously as filmmakers, and I really, really mean that to you. Because if you hear someone say, oh, we need to shoot on this camera, this camera, this camera, and they don't mention sound one time, don't take them seriously. Yeah. I mean that. Don't.
That's a word of advice for all you
up-and-coming filmmakers out there. Pay attention to sound.
Yeah. Anyways, that's going to do it for us. Thanks again. We're probably going to try to do this again next week. Send those questions in.
Links at the bottom.
Links at the bottom. There's also on the screen right now. Thanks for watching. Smash that like button. Ring that bell. Hit that subscribe. Leave comments. Let us know what you think. Ask questions in the email, please. Helps us out quite a bit.
Do not submit your request for trailer reaction videos in this email.
No, send it.
Please don't do that. Just leave them in the comments. We are collecting them. We do have them, but just let's try to keep this separate. We want to make it uniform. But thanks, guys, again for tuning in.